Welcome to our first video of the year. Remember that you'll need to take notes as the video progresses, especially on the key terms listed in your Unit 1 overview packet. This history course begins in the year 1688, which seems like a random year, but it will make sense in a couple of weeks when we discuss English history. Right now I want to begin with a thought experiment. Pretend that you are a time-traveling alien and you transport back 326 years. So it's 1688 and you're in outer space and you're looking down on Earth, and you, the alien, you ask yourself, which civilization on this planet is the most sophisticated and most powerful? Or in other words, which group of people will most likely dominate the planet for the next 300 years? You would probably not guess any of the European kingdoms. For one, it is a divided continent. Spain, France, England, the Holy Roman Empire, the Netherlands, they are all in a constant state of war, without one kingdom maintaining supremacy. Secondly, Europe is small. It's the smallest continent on Earth, and it has relatively few people, just 40 million people living in the western half of the continent. Our alien would probably guess that the most powerful civilizations were three empires in Asia. The first is the Ottoman Empire, which stretched from Eastern Europe all the way through the Middle East and across North Africa. The second empire is the Qing dynasty, which included modern-day China, North and South Korea, Southeast Asia, and Taiwan. And finally, the third empire that our alien would probably conclude is the most powerful is the Mughal Empire, which included modern-day India, Pakistan, and parts of Afghanistan. It is in the Mughal Empire that we begin our study of the modern world, in part to better understand our old friend Malala. In 1688, when our course begins, the Mughal Empire included a population that numbered about 140 million people. That's a lot, especially compared to European kingdoms. England, for example, held about 5 million, and France about 18 million people. The Mughal Empire was a big, crowded place, and it had lots of religious, ethnic, and tribal diversity. Now let's go back to our thought experiment. Let's pretend that our alien landed in the heart of the Mughal Empire and was walking around talking to ordinary people, asking these people, "Who are you?" The typical peasant might say that they are a Muslim or a Hindu, or that they are Pashtun or some other ethnic group, or that they are a member of such and such a tribe, or that they are the son or daughter of such and such a person. The ordinary subject of the Mughal Empire would have a variety of answers, which is an important point to make. With multiple identities comes conflict. But above all, our alien would not hear people say that they are Indian or Pakistani or Afghani. Those nations are much more recent creation. One final point about identity. It was stagnant in 17th century Mughal India. A person born a Hindu peasant would always be a Hindu peasant. People had no notion that they could change religions or change professions or even move to a different part of the empire or even move out of their village. You would remain a peasant because your father, grandfather, and great-grandfather were peasants. Your children and grandchildren would also be peasants. There is no mobility and there's no change. The present is a continuation of the past. Now let's talk about the emperor, Aurangzeb, who in 1688 was one of the most powerful people in the world. The source of his great power and wealth came from his army. He commanded an army that numbered in the hundreds of thousands, making it one of the largest armies in the world. And cannon was his army's secret weapon. Gunpowder gave the Mughals a huge advantage over their gunless enemies. But this professional army was expensive, which means Aurangzeb had to tax his subjects heavily. One government record from the 1680s said that nearly 90% of each peasant's harvest was confiscated by the local Khan, or ruler, who kept some for his own wealth and then paid the rest to the emperor. The second source of Aurangzeb's revenue were tariffs, or taxes on imports. The Mughal Empire, right here, just so happened to be a trading hub for the entire world. Goods flowed east from China through the Mughal Empire, then on to Persia, the Ottoman Empire, and eventually Europe. Silk, spices, sugar, gold, horses, porcelain, wine, leather goods, cotton textiles. All of these goods flowed into and out of the Mughal Empire in a network of trading routes called the Silk Road. With Aurangzeb's conquests, he also brought a new brand of Islam that was much more strict than previous Mughal rulers. And remember that the majority of the Mughal Empire was Hindu, not Muslim. Aurangzeb, perhaps motivated by a genuine belief in Islam, but maybe because he saw the Hindu majority as a political threat to the Muslim Mughals, banded the construction of new Hindu temples. He fired Hindu officials within the government, and he taxed Hindu merchants and pilgrims at higher rates than their Muslim counterparts. Some Hindu temples were torn down and replaced with mosques. Aurangzeb also outlawed gambling, blasphemy, dancing, alcohol, and opium, creating a police force that was called, quote, the Guardians of Public Morality. He arrested, tortured, and executed Hindu leaders who were found guilty of persecuting Muslims. He chopped up one man's body and fed it to wild dogs to make an example of him. Aurangzeb even executed his own brother for having Hindu sympathies. These extreme religious policies, however, backfired, leading to periodic revolts that drained Aurangzeb of money. Hindus rose up in rebellion in 1669, 1670, 1672, 1679, and 1700. Each revolt required Aurangzeb to mobilize his massive army. But it wasn't just Hindus who revolted. Remember our old friend Malala. Her Muslim ancestors, the Pashtun, rose up in 1672 and were led by a warrior poet named Kushal Khan Khattak. The revolt was sparked when a Mughal soldier raped a Pashtun woman in Kushal's village. The rebellion spread across the Swat Valley and beyond. Aurangzeb sent an army to destroy the rebels, only to have that army destroyed at the Khyber Pass by the rebels. The Khyber Pass is a mountainous area that now borders Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's now the site of continued conflict between the Taliban, the U.S. forces, and the Pakistani army. Aurangzeb never reconquered the Pashtun. However, that is not to say that the Pashtun lived happily ever after. Kushal, the Pashtun rebel leader, failed to unite the various Pashtun tribes, and he ultimately was killed, not by the Mughals, but by his fellow Pashtun. A long period of civil war erupted among the Pashtun, and some might argue that the civil war never really ended. But let's go back to our alien. At first glance, our Martian might choose the Mughals as the most powerful civilization on Earth, but not if he was looking closely. By the time Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Mughal Empire was bankrupt, and the trade routes that originally led through the Mughal Empire began to dry up. In our next video, our alien will turn his attention to another powerful empire, the Qing dynasty in China, as he asks if this civilization is likely to be the dominant one for centuries to come.